Well, hey, I'm Jeff Baumgartner with Light Reading. I'm here joined by John Keib with GFiber.
How are
John,
you?
good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Great. Yeah, so we're here at Network X in the Dallas area, and we're just about 30 minutes after you were just on stage as a headliner here. We're going to talk about amplifying some of the things you talked about. But I thought to start off is, you got a lot going on right now, market expansion, looking into some ways to enhance the broadband experience, the think beyond speeds and feeds, and we'll get into that. But if you had to encapsulate it, now that we're heading toward the second half of the year, what's top of the list for you, front burner, top priorities?
So for us, service is our core product, even though we spend a lot of time on speed and offering the latest kind of, I think, the most cutting edge forms of speed for customer. But I'd say that it's really twofold. One is building our network out, our XGS network, which we have customers migrating to. We have customers going out, new markets completely on that network. That network has the capability to go 8 gig symmetrical. And then concurrent with that, we have the market rollout of our 20 gig solution, or 25 gig PON solution. That actually by the end of the year will be available in all markets as well. On the service side, we're spending a lot of time on reinforcing whether customers really feel and appreciate the speed that we're offering in the home. So this is kind of step two. What first was to get the network right. Step two is to make sure that from a wireless perspective and a technology and a router perspective, that they're getting the right speeds in their home and actually start to learn and appreciate that in the home. So those are two really large priorities outside of the ones you mentioned around expansion and things like that.
Right, and then earlier this week, there was a blog post from you. You talked about the personalized home network quality score.
Yeah.
And I think that was really interesting because it does fit into the, again, looking beyond just speed and price and things like that. So I know there was an example to show what a customer would see.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that program and how you're doing it and how you're creating that score and what the timeline is in terms of getting it into the market?
Yeah. It's kind of multifaceted, so it might take a second to describe, but it actually starts when an installer goes to the home or a customer does an install. So we're looking at 2 core metrics right now. There's about 15 other metrics that are weighted in the personal health score, but 2 big ones are something called TR143, which is measuring our network speed to the router, and RSSI level, which is the measure from that router to the extenders in the home. In order to complete an install going forward, you actually have to be in a very healthy range. So at a minimum, our speeds are getting to the home. Those are 2 large factors of like what determines your health score in the home. Then there's things like IP uptime, ONT uptime, including things like what type of router you have, because that might have a different performance spec than some of the others. And then from there over time, I imagine we'll start incorporating how the devices in the home are actually interacting with that. That'll be like phase 2. Probably next year. So the goal is to bring a whole ecosystem into the customer so they can see and experience what's going on. We also are working on something called a rate calculator, so customers can actually understand, based on the type of device they have, what type of speeds they should be getting in the home. So if you have a Wi-Fi 7 phone, we think you should be able to get certainly up to 3 gigs on that wirelessly. If you're back on with a Wi-Fi 5 phone, you're probably getting 300 to 400. So we're going to go really deep into explaining this to our customers. Why, you might ask? Because the network to the home, the network in the home, and then what we add to that network over time is probably the next steps for our business, right? To make things better and different as an ISP.
All right, and where are you in terms of the status of getting it ready, getting it deployed, and then how will the customer access it? Will it be part of an app that they can pop in and just check?
So like at a real fundamental level, we would think of the app as almost like becoming an ISP. So our app is kind of the nerve center for what we want to do going forward. All of our quote unquote smart channels, how like you would interact with before, SMS text, phone, chat, those are all going to be embedded within our app. So with the app itself, really on the front page, you'll see your health score right off the bat and be like, hey, I'm doing great. We want customers to interact with this because even at its most, in its most rudimentary form, it's a great quality control for the customers to know that they're up and running. By the way, we see the same technical metrics that they see. So we can proactively sweep for these kind of anomalies on our network. So we really think it's a hardening of the network in the home, and that ultimately customers will learn to appreciate that over time as they add more modern devices and things like that.
All right, and is the idea though to like upgrade an existing app to enable this new functionality, or how are you going to roll this out?
No, it'll be built into our app as we go forward, and it is launching as we speak. So there's probably a little bit of a rollout for it. It's a full service app though. It does your account management and things like that.
Okay.
And then we'll add features over time beyond that. Beyond the personal health score over the next 6 months to a year. So got an aggressive schedule with it. The goal is to put kind of the control back in the hand of the customer a little bit more than maybe where we've been over the last couple of years.
Okay. And also this week, you got in a little bit into the network evolution, and moving up to XGS-PON. Just remind me or remind everybody, where are you in the rollout? And I think you're targeting like end of year.
So there's really, so for what we call SFUs, or which are traditional homes out there, like not MDU and apartment environments.
Single family?
Yeah, single family. We're pretty much there, I think, at this point. Okay. There's a small bubble of customers that aren't there yet. So, 90%, that's already available to those customers. We're working on finishing out the MDUs by the end of the year, which gets us pretty much to 97% of our market. So that would be making available XGS with 8 gig symmetrical speeds to those customers. And then from there, as I said earlier, we're adding on the 20 gig overlay. And at some point, we'll make a decision how fast we want to scale that to customers, and or what other tiers do we need, whether it's for commercial, large scale MDU environments, or boosting the speed someday for residential customers beyond 8 gig symmetrical.
Okay. And for the XGS-PON, in terms of how you're deploying it, obviously you're going to put it in anything new right off the bat. But what about customers that have been on GPON? Will it be like success-based, they're going to upgrade to 5 gig or something like that?
So right now, any new markets we've been doing certainly are launching on XGS. We use what are called combo cards that allow you to do GPON and XGS at the same time. And so if a customer were to upgrade to a multi-gig speed tier over the next several months and they were legacy GPON, they're going to get a new ONT at that point. If a customer we install any day here forward is in an XGS market, they're going to default to XGS. So we see the markets start shifting from 50% GPON all the way to 100% over time over the next 2 to 3 years as we make this migration. We most likely, and do not currently plan to go back and take a customer as a 1 gig connection and force swap them over to XGS. It would be kind of an odd phone call to make, or a contact with a customer, be like, you don't know why you need this, but we're going to tell you why. Like, that's not something we would do. So
okay, that makes sense. And then as far as like the 20 gig overlay, right? You're working with Nokia, so how are you deploying that, right, as an overlay? Is it very targeted, like a customer, like if they like, hey, I need this, you would go in and do it?
Well, first of all, I just want to level set where we are with it. We announced it. We have about 4,000 individuals say we want to try this. We have it probably in 7 to 8 locations right now. One of the things with that technology is you don't just engineer for a faster internet, you have to engineer for things like speed tests and things like that on your network. So if someone's going to do 20 gig speed tests, they got to get a 20 gig speed test. So part of this is kind of assimilating this into our network over the next couple of months, learning how it lives and breathes on our network, and then how do we have to harden it to scale it going forward. So it is something we're committed to, but honestly, we've already said we want to go faster than that. We'll certainly get to 50 and to 100. We get the question a lot, like, why do you want to do this? And the answer is we actually can see the use case in our network for it for long-term planning. We're not here trying to get through the next year from a network planning standpoint. We're playing this out for the next 8, 10 years for what's coming. So.
Right, and I think you've also been looking at potential applications and ideas that would need these sorts of capabilities. And as you're kind of looking out on the horizon, well, what's going to drive the consumer, businesses aside, what's going to take the consumer into that multi-gig world? Is it just more devices on the network? Do you see specific applications that are going to need this?
It's a fair question. I think the most important thing that customers want to do it, okay, so that it's not us like painting a picture that we think miraculously is going to happen. So we can see the usage trends, but it starts with really engineering for the top 5% of our customers in terms of usage, peak usage, burst traffic happening at prime time and things like that, and assessing, okay, is this an experience that might have ended up not delivering the experience we wanted? Those would be like our first early adopters that we would target, be like, hey, we think you should use this type of service. We're not really at that tipping point yet. So we look at things like gaming providers, and we really want them to upgrade their Wi-Fi chipsets in those devices. We want better ports ports on the back to get to more than 1 gigabit per second on those ports. Same thing, products like Apple Vision, we can start seeing what those are doing in terms of bandwidth. And to your point, it becomes a mix. It becomes a mix of the number of IP devices and then the concurrent usage of those IP devices in tonnage, right? So people here we're doing 8 gig symmetrical, that's fine. But the reality is when you put that through your Wi-Fi 60 or Wi-Fi 7, you're not doing 8 gig symmetrical at that point. You're on a different speed, right? So you're really competing for 2-3 gigabits per second now wirelessly. And we definitely see the roadmap and usage trends for that over the next 2 to 4 years. So we feel comfortable about it.
All right, great. And Google Fiber, when we were still calling it Google Fiber, now GFiber, when we first started covering them, obviously the flag was planted on gigabit symmetrical. Like you said, you've got multi-gigabit capability. As far as like uptake right now, what are you seeing on the multi-gig side? Is there a kind of a slow but steady ramp, or is you see spikes? It probably depends on the market and the customer.
This is really important because this actually goes to our longer term business plan, which is by getting XGS ONT in and multi-gig routers in, we create a really low friction upgrade for these customers, okay? So we don't have to go back and change an ONT, and we don't have to go back and put in new equipment. So at that point, I think what we're looking for is customers that actually fit that in terms of how we want to market to drive quote unquote higher price packages and ARPU over the next couple of years. So I guess to say it's very important to our long-term business health to get there.
Okay. And a lot of what we've talked about today relates to fiber, right? But you also have WebPath, right? Fixed wireless. So how does that, just give us an update on how that fits strategically into the portfolio. Because it's still out there. I don't know how you're using it from an expansion level, but I just want to get caught up on that.
So we're very bullish about our WebPass product. It started out as a standalone service in multiple markets like San Francisco, and where we had no fiber footprint at all, right? It's using 80 gigahertz millimeter wave technology. It actually works very well. What we're trying to do with that is actually increase the quality of service to get to multi-gig. Today it's traditionally a 1 gig service. Hits the top of a building, comes down through their Ethernet or LAN, whatever they have in there. We've expanded that to now include MoCA for cable, so we can now go into more buildings with that technology. It's kind of capped at about 2.5 gig at that point of how fast we could go. So we're working with MoCA providers to get that up to 10 gigs someday. We don't have confirmation of that yet. And we're also looking at densifying the network so we can get to the same type of speeds, at least up to 8 gigs someday for our WebPass products. That is a little bit more trying based on how wireless technology works. So that includes things like we have to upgrade the radios beyond 10 gig on top of a building and ultimately have the right switching gear in the buildings that allow you to do multi-gig. So we're very committed to it. It's just a little bit of a different engineering runway than maybe the fiber business.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting on the MoCA side. So would that be like MoCA access, or
I am not close enough to the conversation to answer that. I think what I'm hearing right now is we're kind of capped out at the 2.5 gig range, and that there is a potential version to go faster, but we don't have a commitment from a vendor, at least we don't, to go faster than that.
Okay, well, great. Well, it'll be something we'll keep an eye on as things go forward. So, well, John, thanks a lot for your time. It was good to see you here in the Dallas area, and thanks for
your time.
Sure thing.
All right, we'll see you.
All right.
Thank you.